WFYI podcast brought to you by Bloomington, Indiana, an American college town offering food and drink, college sports, outdoor activities, live music, cool art, and good times daily. Everyone is welcome in Bloomington. More information at visitbloomington.com.
This is WFYI News Now. It's March 25th, and I'm Darian Benson. On today's show, Republican gubernatorial candidate Jamie Reitenour is excluded from primary debates. What we can see in the latest state jobs report, and PACE, a local nonprofit that helps people re-entering society after incarceration, has moved into a larger space.
There's just a lot of barriers because the greater community doesn't always understand incarceration and felonies.
Those stories coming up, but first, Eskenazi Health held a ribbon cutting late last week to unveil its newest healthcare complex on the east side of Indianapolis, the Eskenazi Health Thomas and Arlene Grande campus. Side Effects Public Media's Elizabeth Gabriel has more.
The new facility was developed over 2 years with neighborhood input. A partnership with the Marion County Public Health Department will allow residents to access a variety of medical services all under one roof. That includes primary care physicians, diagnostic testing, and mental health services. Gail Reeves has been an East Side resident for 13 years. She says the care she got through Eskenazi Health taught her how to exercise and eat healthy, and it ended her type 2 diabetes.
The journey wasn't always easy, but I was willing to put the work in into achieving my goals.
Reeves is excited that access to such care will come to the city's East Side residents. Eskenazi Health also plans to open a mental health center near the Community Justice Center by May. Elizabeth Gabriel, Side Effects Public Media.
Republican gubernatorial candidate Jamie Reitenour says local television stations should correct the, quote, injustice of excluding her from primary debates. Fox 59, CBS 4, and Wish TV will both host debates for Indiana's GOP gubernatorial primary. To get into those debates, local Fox CBS owner Nexstar requires candidates to have reached at least 5% in public polling and $100,000 in campaign contributions. That bars both Reitenour and former Attorney General Curtis Hill. Wish TV's criteria aren't publicly available, though Reitenour has said it's a $300,000 contribution requirement. Some of the other candidates have called on the stations to include all candidates on the ballot, but Reitenour says some, including U.S. Senator Mike Braun, considered the frontrunner, have been silent.
If the candidates will not stand for what is right now, why would Hoosiers believe they will stand for Hoosiers later?
Reitenour points out that in the poll Nexstar is using to exclude her, 43% of people were undecided on the race. Indiana state officials say the state's overall economic outlook remains strong, even as the state's labor force has shrunk 4 consecutive months. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Brandon Smith reports on the most recent state jobs report released Friday.
Indiana's unemployment rate remains steady in February at 3.5%. That marks 6 consecutive months at that rate. Yet the total labor force shrunk again, with the participation rate down to 62.8%, the lowest it's been since December 2021. The labor force's account of not just those with a job, but also those actively looking for one, and it's often cited as a measure of optimism in the economy. State officials, however, point to the labor force participation rate among what they call the key demographic, 25 to 54-year-olds, where the rate is more than 80%. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Brandon Smith at the State House.
And for our final story today, Indianapolis nonprofit Public Advocates in Community Reentry, or PACE, assists people reentering the community after incarceration. PACE provides services including case management, recovery support, and workforce development. PACE recently moved their services to a larger facility at 13th and Meridian. I recently sat down with Executive Director Rhiannon Edwards to learn how the new space will impact services.
Why is a program like PACE important in Central Indiana?
Reentry programs like ours are important because this population is often stigmatized. It's if you've never lived it and you don't have a family member that's lived it, you don't understand it. And so it's easy to villainize, someone that has done something that's illegal, right? And so we're there to not only provide a service, but to advocate and say, you know what, everyone is not a bad guy. They do deserve a second chance. They are okay. They do have children. And so it's not just a direct service. It's what we can do in the advocacy realm that I would say makes programs like ours important.
Can you tell me about some of the services PACE provides?
Yes, we provide wraparound services to individuals exiting the justice system. Those wraparound services could be, peer recovery coaching, case management, employment readiness, just whatever the needs are of that individual.
What are some of the barriers people might face after incarceration?
The first initial barrier, I would say, is the stigma of incarceration and the stigma of the felony conviction. After that, there's a multitude of barriers from employment. Where can I work with a felony? Housing. Where can I live with a felony? Can I go to a field trip with my child? There's just a lot of barriers because the greater community doesn't always understand incarceration and felonies.
Can you tell me more about your new space?
Yes, we were honored to receive a gift from the late philanthropist Crystal DeHaan, and we have named our space the Crystal DeHaan Turning Point Plaza. We are so gracious to Crystal for the nearly $2.8 million legacy grant that we received, and so we are honored to be able to name our space after her. We're excited because this space is 3 times larger than our previous space. We've been operating in a very small space for many years. We haven't had space for classrooms. We could operate 1 class at a time. Now we have, 3 classrooms, a computer lab, meeting rooms, and so just the ability to serve more people at one time is honestly the greatest asset of this space. Not only is it on a bus line, but it's beautiful, and so it allows our clients to come in and receive services in a beautiful space.
PACE was also just awarded a $1 million grant from Yield Giving. How will PACE use these funds?
Yes, we're super excited about that. To be honest, we weren't sure if we would make it. Over 6,000 people applied for that. And so when we even made it to the second round, we still thought, what? There's no way we're going to make it. And so to be honest, we just found out we got it. We haven't really decided exactly what we're going to do with it, but I can tell you that we want to figure out how to grow into this new space. What programs can we add that we never thought that we would have the ability to add? We never thought that we would necessarily be in our forever home, which is what we consider this space. And so now this funding allows us the opportunity to really grow into that space and figure out what programming are we missing, what service are we missing that we didn't necessarily have the funding to do because it is, unrestricted.
Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by the following people who live in your community: Abriana Herron, Daudelin, Kendall Antron, who composed the music for this podcast, and me, Darian Benson. Our news director is Sarah Neal-Estes. If you liked today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.